Hey, Shalom, this is Chris, and this week's message is about the Sabbath, bringing peace through order. Now, from creation through to the New Jerusalem, the Sabbath brings peace by establishing order. In order to have actual peace, we think of peace in modern times as the absence of war. We think of peace and prosperity as when nations are not actually shooting at each other, people aren't killing each other, and there's food on the shelves, and you can go about your business in relative peace and safety, which is true. But I'm talking about a much greater peace, a greater peace where you can know what to expect from your society, and also about justice and equality. Did you know the Sabbath is about justice and equality? Well, stay tuned. Now, for those of us who've been in this walk for a while, I believe I started keeping the Sabbath over 20 years ago, and I've been in it for so long that you forget the contrast. I forget the contrast. I've been in this way of life, walking out the commandments, living the way the Messiah lived. First century Christianity, you see how there's kind of a pattern here. I've been doing this for so long now that it's almost impossible to remember the previous life. And the previous life of, if you attended church, you rushed and you went out to dinner afterwards, and you were always fussing and the like. And so it's easy to kind of forget your first love, because those of us who came to this from Sunday Christianity, when we already had a basis of the faith, and we realized that we're going to church on the wrong day, or keeping the wrong day holy, if you're keeping it holy at all, and we make the switch, we get really passionate about that. We stay passionate for quite a while we're learning and we're doing. And now I've done this so long that my children have been raised in it, and I don't have that sense of urgency in my own life for learning and for digesting it. And my children will never know the contrast. They only know the Sabbath and the holy days. They don't know about the made up holidays of mainstream Christianity. They've grown up in this walk. And so I'm going to talk today about how this peace and this order was established at creation, and it goes all the way through history. And keeping the Sabbath is such an incredible lifestyle change. It's such an incredible blessing that I do wish that people would not put up walls and put up barriers. Rather, hear me out, and maybe even try it a time or two before you decide to put up the blinders, because this is not just a commandment. It's not just what we're supposed to be doing because of the Bible. When you actually surrender to the will of God and do what he himself did, not just telling us what to do, he literally did this. Check it out. Genesis 2:2-3. By the seventh day, God completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. Now, when I gave this message to the assembly a few days ago on Shabbat, I asked the question, does anybody in the room think that God needed to rest? After the 6 days of creation, do you think the creator of the universe was actually tuckered out? That he needed a boost? Maybe he needed to reach for an energy drink? No, that's absurd. He did this for the same reason that his son got baptized. Yeshua got baptized by his cousin John in the New Testament, and he's the only being on earth who has ever lived that didn't need to be baptized. He had no sin. He had nothing to repent of. The Messiah got baptized as an example for the rest of us, to show us what we're supposed to do. If we want to call ourselves Christians, we have to get baptized after confessing our sins and accepting Yeshua as the Messiah. This isn't not a negotiable thing. And most of Christianity understands this. Of course, there's a few exceptions. Of course, if people are debilitated and they can't get in the water, or they're prohibited because of societal or political, difficulties. But trust me, I've seen handicapped people get baptized. If I recall correctly, I've even participated in some of this. If there's a will, there's a way. But the creator of the universe rested on the seventh day to show us what to do. Did you know that the seventh day was the first day that Adam was alive? He started his life by keeping the Sabbath. That's his baseline. His baseline was peace and rest and enjoying creation. This order is actually required for peace. Understanding what is expected, having cycles, and having a framework for living helps an individual run a household, and it helps a society to run society as well. It's incredibly satisfying to have the pattern that we live. If you don't do this, you don't. Maybe you experience this at some day during the week, but every Friday over here, it's incredibly satisfying to have all the chores done. This last week, I was without transport, was without a car, and my wife, all the kids were out at school or they were at work and doing their own chores. So I did all the household chores. I vacuumed all the floors. I did all the dishes. I did all the laundry, and I put it away. The day before, the yard was mowed. Took out the trash from everybody's rooms, and kicked back. And it's just really absolutely nice when everything's in its place. My wife comes home from work. She goes to the store. She brings home takeout, so that way we don't have to fuss with dinner and we don't have a big mess. Everybody fills up their car with gas on Friday, and we just have an end to our week by preparing to take a day off every week. And the family being raised in this, it's just an incredible blessing. And you schedule your life to be with God one day a week, and not just a random day of the week. You do it on the day he said to do it. And then the Sabbath comes, and what do? We get together with our congregations, people that we love, people that we know, people that we can be ourselves in front of. I'm not saying that we're fake the other 6 days of the week, but having this church family that you can go to actually share your thoughts, your emotions, what's going on in the world, what's going on with familial problems, your blessings, your infirmities, your healings. Having this church family that's all also prepared everything in advance for this day is really just a wonderful sense of community and unity. And the ability to have this kind of safe space cut out one day out of seven, where you can actually be who Yahweh wants you to be while fellowshipping it with him and his son. So here in Exodus 28-11, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of Yahweh your Elohim. In it you shall not do any work, you or your son, or your daughter, your male or your female servant, or your cattle, or your sojourner who stays with you. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore Yahweh blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Remember, the Hebrews were slaves in Egypt. Slaves don't get a day off. Slaves work whenever their masters tell them to work. So when they get to the base of Mount Sinai, Yahweh says, it will not be that way with you. You will have a break. All of your cattle will have a break. All of your servants will have a break. Even the people who are staying with you, everybody in the land gets a day off. It's the world's first labor law. Do you know that? It's an incredible blessing because you would see from a helicopter level the entire country operating the way I operate my house. You would see everybody work would probably stop at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon every Friday as everybody goes home and gets their houses ready, finishes their chores, and prepares for Shabbat, has a nice meal together that's prepared ahead of time, gets together the next day, the whole country going to hear the word of God on the right day of the week, and nobody is expected to be doing anything else. This is a big part of the societal change. It's that in our 24/7 world, your boss can tell you to do stuff every day of the week. And then you have to set the boundary as to when you're going to work. With this situation, with the Sabbath, if the whole nation kept it, nobody is pushing out emails on a Friday afternoon saying, I need this back immediately. It's part of your life to realize that you and your neighbor have this time with Yahweh every week, and everybody has the same time with Yahweh every week. So everybody would set their projects to be pushed out by Thursday afternoon so people could finish them up by Friday, and you build equality, empathy, trust, community. You treat people the way you want to be treated. In our 24/7 society and in the Sunday system, there's nothing to keep holy. You go to church whenever you want to go to church. You hit the Applebee's when you're done. You're forcing people to work for you. It's a completely anarchical society. Everybody does what's right in their own eyes. But you see, it's not legalistic to do what Yahweh wants. In fact, it's a humongous blessing of empathy and equality because anybody within the borders of Israel is to have a day off, to relax, to take it easy, to enjoy their creation, to enjoy their work. Because, we're made in the image of God, and God is a creator. He created mankind to be creators. Adam and Eve were to tend the garden. They were to make things. They were to do things. They were to build societies, have children, raise them up. We are builders. We're supposed to be doing things for 6 days. And then we get to enjoy the fruits of our labor on the Sabbath day. It's amazing, amazing thing to do. And it becomes so normal to respect other people's time. When brethren work together, when we talk to each other during the week, we all know that what we're going to be doing every Saturday, every Friday night to Saturday night. Here in Leviticus 23, Yahweh makes it even abundantly clearer. For 6 days work may be done, but on the seventh day there is a Sabbath of complete rest, a holy convocation. You shall not do any work. It is a Sabbath to Yahweh in all your dwellings. Tells you here that the day belongs to Yahweh. He's claiming it. 6 days are common. 1 day is holy. We're going to talk about holiness here in a little bit because it's very important to have this concept in our lives of holiness, of things being set apart, as things being off limits that are reserved for God. Our society doesn't have any of that today. Our leaders don't even respect flags, don't respect days, don't respect genders, don't respect anything of that like. People just do whatever is expedient. How is this working out? How is this constant strife working out? This idea of putting freedom above service, freedom above everything, liberty for me and none for you. Everybody gets and takes and takes and takes and doesn't take time off to spend it with God. So the Sabbath day belongs to Yahweh. It is not a day off for you to get chores done. It's not a day off for you to catch up on stuff. It's a day off for Yahweh, for community, for family. So you don't just rush home and get back to work. You finish the day off with your family. You communicate with them. You enjoy their fellowship. You have refreshments, maybe kick a soccer ball around in the yard with the little ones. It's a day for enjoying life the way life was meant to be. Now, the words here for holy convocation are Mikra Kodesh. If you look at this in your Strongs, it says it backwards. Holy is Kodesh, Mikra is convocation. And in Hebrew, adjectives come after nouns, not before. Mikra means something called out, like a calling or a gathering or something like that. It's an assemblage of people. Kodesh is holy, sacred, dedicated. This is literally a holy convocation. That's what it says. It's to take a day and get together to worship with Yahweh and nothing else. This is baseline holiness. And today in Christianity, they say, are you holier than me? Well, aren't you trying to be holy? If you're not, why aren't you? Because Yahweh intended for all of us to have a certain level of holiness, a certain level of reverence, a certain level of hands off. That doesn't belong to you. And the entire nation, including the sojourners, including the stranger among you, your visitors, everybody has this rule that Sabbath is hands off. That's set apart for Yahweh. That gathering you're having is for the creator of the universe. It's not for you to do what you want to do with. And then there's other levels of holiness that the Levites and the Kohen have as you get closer and closer to the tabernacle. You have more and more things that are off limits to commoners like us. But this baseline holiness is there. And keep in mind that this is how Adam started his life, by entering a world and entering a space of time that did not belong to him. And said, okay, 6 days, Adam, you till the ground. 7th day, you stop, because this is Yahweh's time, not yours. This word Kodesh here is the same word when Moses met Yahweh at the burning bush. He says, this ground is holy, set apart, not for you. So Moses has to stop, take off his sandals, be barefoot. What happens when you're barefoot? Why would somebody do this? Because in ancient times, as in modern times, but ancient times more important, if you're in a field, you're on a gravel path, and you're barefoot, you are helpless. You can't run away. You can't fight. You can't defend yourself. When you're taking off your sandals, about touching the ground, maybe there's more to it about the skin touching the earth, but it's showing that you are the lesser being in the equation. That's what it does when Moses has to take off his sandals. It says, whoever's in this bush is in charge. I can't run away, and I can't fight. He had to change his behavior. Moses had to switch up and act differently. And that is what the Sabbath day is about too. You act differently. It's not a common day. It's a set apart time where you are to change your behavior because you're going to be in the presence of Yahweh. Of course, you're in his presence all the time, but this is the special time. This is the holy time. So there's a baseline for behavior for the entire society when you have this cycle of Sunday to Friday, and Friday sunset to Saturday sunset as Yahweh's. You're setting up a holiness. You're setting up your children to understand the difference between what belongs to them and what belongs to God. Now here in Mark 2:27, Yeshua said to them, the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. And then Genesis 1:27, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. This is kind of nuanced information, but in Mark 2:27, the word for man here is anthropos, which is the Greek word for mankind. It's where we get the word anthropology, the study of civilizations, the study of mankind. Anthropos, so Yeshua, the Son of God, is telling us right here that the Sabbath was made for mankind. Mankind was not made for the Sabbath. He is literally referring to the book of Genesis and creation week here. He's not saying that the Sabbath, that man was made to celebrate the Sabbath. He's saying that the Sabbath was made for man, and that God rested as an example for the man, Adam. Now, what you might not know is the word Adam, or Adam in Hebrew, refers to the guy, but it also refers to mankind. And when the Hebrew Bible was translated into Greek about 200 to 150 years before Yeshua, they chose the word anthropos for man in this verse. It says God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. We're created in the image of God, all of us. Every human being that has ever drawn breath is made in the image of Yahweh, and that Yahweh that we serve is the one that sanctifies the seventh day by resting on it himself. Let there be no doubt that this was intended to apply to all mankind, and the sooner you do it, the better. The better for you today, and the better for you tomorrow, and the better for you in the Olam Haba, the world to come. Exodus 31:16-17. So the sons of Israel shall observe the Sabbath to celebrate the Sabbath throughout their generations as a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the sons of Israel forever. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heaven and the earth, but on the seventh day he ceased from labor and was refreshed. On the Galatians 3:26. For you are all sons of God through faith in Messiah Yeshua. I'll tell you a little bit of nuance here about the Bible. Sons of Israel is synonymous very often with the phrase sons of God. That's God's people. And for us to be connected to Yahweh, for the Bible to even matter to us, we have to be sons of God. And that happens by believing in the Messiah. The Messiah is named Jesus or Yeshua, who also kept the seventh-day Sabbath. And we all believe that he was keeping the seventh-day Sabbath with God at creation. John 1 says Jesus was with God in the beginning. Paul echoes that, says through him all things were made, and that he's the mediator between us and Yahweh. So let there be no doubt that the Messiah has been keeping the Sabbath from at least creation and expects us to be doing it as well. We're connected to Israel. We're adopted children of God through the blood of Messiah. We don't replace Israel. We join Israel. So even though the Sabbath is for mankind, we can really hammer the point home here to say that, don't you want to be a child of God? Don't you want to be one of his sons or daughters? You should, because that's the pathway to salvation. And you should do what they say. In fact, I'll show you here in a minute that you will do what they say at some point in the future. And I want to take a break here to talk about how Satan doesn't want you to keep the Sabbath. Because last year on October the 7th, Israel was attacked on the Sabbath by the demons from the land of Gaza. These absolute, they're demons. There's nothing else to call them. Invaded Israel on a Sabbath day for the week, but it was also a high Sabbath, which is called the 8th day It's the 8th day of the Feast of Tabernacles, and it is called Shemini Atzeret in Hebrew, which is an annual high holiday. I was preaching that day at a Feast of Tabernacles celebration in Wisconsin. The day that Hamas attacked Israel, there were thousands and thousands of Christians in Israel celebrating the Feast of Tabernacles and the Sabbath. Throughout history, Satan has done everything he can to get people to stop celebrating the Sabbath. When the Greeks invaded Judea, they did awful things to people who kept the Sabbath. They murdered them for not working on the seventh day because they want to erase Yahweh's culture from the face of the earth. So you understand when something bad happens, when America got attacked on 9/11, the world stood up and raised American flags. The entire globe stood with us. He said, we're all Americans. And when other countries get attacked, we say, oh, we're standing with them when atrocities happen. So guess what? When Israel is attacked, Israel is the children of God. Whether you want to believe that or not, whether it makes sense or not, because they don't accept the Messiah, and they're not really good at the Torah, but Yahweh doesn't ever let them get destroyed. And they're the ones who preserved the Torah for us. And they're the ones who preserved a lot of good knowledge. And Satan is constantly trying to kill them. So if you want to stand in solidarity with the enemies of Satan, well, that's Israel. And that's the Sabbath and the holy day of Shemini Atzeret. Rome also prohibited people from keeping the Sabbath. They wanted to erase Judaism or any type of Torah keeping from the earth. That's when Christianity broke from the commandments. After the Roman Empire flattened Judea, and then after the next revolt in the early 100s, they went about slaughtering everybody who kept the Sabbath. And both the Greeks and the Romans would force people to eat pork too. So there's a pattern here. Do you want to be on the side of Yahweh, or do you want to be on the side of his enemies? Because there's a behavior that you can do that will identify you as a child of God that Satan wants to kill, using the Greek army, the Roman Catholic Church, the universal church that came 300 years later, that all forbade any type of Judaizing. And they didn't mean Judaizing, they meant commandment keeping. They don't want anybody to keep the Sabbath. They don't want anybody to abstain from pork and shellfish. They don't want anybody doing anything that had to do with that mean old God of the Old Testament. Well, let me tell you something. That mean old God of the Old Testament is Yeshua's God, and he is God, and he will be God forever and ever. And if who else tried to kill the Jews? Hitler tries to kill the Jews. And today we look around this country and we see people putting on the garb of the demons from Gaza who want to kill all the Jews and saying things like from the river to the sea because they want to kill all the Jews. And you know who they want to kill after they kill all the Jews? They want to kill all the Americans. So it benefits us to be on the right side of history, to stand with the children of God today. And if you really want to show your solidarity, here you go. Exodus 31, 16 to 17. Exodus 20. You name it. First century Christianity from Moses, from ancient generations, has in every city those who preach him, since he is read in the synagogues every Sabbath. Getting together in synagogue is a replacement for Mikra Kodesh. It is a church, and getting together and having church every Sabbath to hear Moses and the rest of the Bible is how the first century believers started out. They didn't have Bibles. They didn't keep Sunday holy. They didn't keep it. What they did have to do was stop keeping Sunday holy, because they were keeping it holy for a different God, and they had to adopt the ways of Yahweh. And this is the peace. The first converts to Christianity adopted pagan practices that looked a lot very similar to what is called Christian practices today, and they adopted practices that look very similar to what is called Judaism today. Now, I'm not telling you to convert to Judaism by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm not telling you to obey their made-up, man-made laws or any such thing. What I am telling you is that this commandment really matters, and it identifies you through your behavior as to which God you serve. If you observe the Sabbath, it is a sign that you have put yourself in subjection under Yahweh, the creator of heaven and earth, who set apart the seventh day at creation. If you do not keep this day, you are telling him that you are not his child. And if you keep another day, you are saying to Yahweh, I serve a different God. Very basic, very simple, and very, very important. In Isaiah 66:23, it shall be from new moon to new moon and from Sabbath to Sabbath, all mankind will come to bow down before me, says Yahweh. In this word, this verse, the word for mankind is not anthropos. It's the Hebrew word for flesh. This is another important thing. It is more comprehensive than anthropos. It's more comprehensive than mankind. It is saying anything that draws breath will keep the Sabbath and obey the calendar of Yahweh. They will, not optional. There is no third party here that gets to say that they're saved and doesn't keep the Sabbath. This commandment is from the millennium, is for the millennial time after the return of the Messiah, that all flesh will keep the Sabbaths. So you might want to start now. The Bible shows about a 6,000-year period where Yahweh is encouraging people to follow him. He's being Mr. Nice Guy right now. He's inviting us to join him. And he's a very patient being. But he has limitations. And he has made it abundantly clear that sinners will not be in the kingdom. And not keeping the Sabbath is a sin. Now, you call that earning your salvation, or you call that loving God, either way, this says what it says. And you have a decision to make. Because the Bible is very clear. It says two very clear things, and it's established through the behaviors of Israel and the stories of the Bible, that you can love God and keep his commandments, or you can fear God and keep his commandments. However you get there, you better be keeping those commandments. Because if you're not keeping the Sabbath in the millennium, you're not going to be in the kingdom. You're going to be outside with the weeping and the gnashing of the teeth. Yahweh is going to execute judgment. And what's a shame is that the people who get judged for not keeping the Sabbath and not obeying the very easy commandments that my family has been able to observe for over 20 years are going to be punished for rejecting the best lifestyle they could have had. Keeping this lifestyle, accepting the order that Yahweh has put the universe in, and worshiping the way he said to worship, really solves a lot of problems and puts you at peace when you accept his order and realize he's in control and that you are the lesser being. And you remind yourself of that every 7 days. Observing the Sabbath is a blessing. It shows us the order established for mankind at creation. It gives us a pattern for our lives that incorporates faith obedience, order, compassion, empathy, study, and fellowship. This order brings a peace that just can't be explained. I'm trying to encourage people to adopt this lifestyle today. You can study it and know it to be true and check that box off in your brain, but you don't understand it until you've done it for a couple of years and realize when you look back, you know what? That did work better. I'm glad I did that. Living this lifestyle for so long, it becomes second nature. Similar to the book of Isaiah when it says the former things will not be remembered. Similar to the song Amazing Grace when we've been there 10,000 years. Just as there wasn't a one. So anyhow, I hope you enjoy this message on the Sabbath. I hope you contemplate it. I hope you take it to heart. Study to show yourselves approved. And I will see you next Shabbat.